Hi and welcome to this Porsche 914 project where I'm restoring a 1975 Porsche 914. So in the last video I showed you all the different panels that I was buying for this Porsche 914. Here's an example of one here. So if you missed that, it might be worth going and having a look because you might find it quite interesting. Also in the last video I mentioned I'd been doing a lot of cutting in this area, so I'd cut out these floor pans on the driver and the passenger side. And then I realised not only does a lot of wiring run down this centre console, but also the fuel lines run down this area. Don't get me wrong, I was being quite careful how I did the work, but I thought I don't really want to be welding in this area and putting in the new floor pan while the fuel lines are in place, and of course the fuel tank's in the front. So this video is all about getting that fuel tank drained and removed from the car. Okay, well let's go have a look then. So I've never actually removed a fuel tank before, but I've done a little bit of reading and apparently the 914 is actually an easy one, so good for fuel tank virgins to get started on, I think. So this is what I've learned. So this is a expansion tank, and down in here there's bolts around the outside. When I undo those I'll show you that more clearly, but that will enable you to take the center part out and you can access the tank more easily. And then I'm going to use a little hand pump to pump out the fuel. And then after you've done that and the tank's empty, so it's nice and light, there's a clamp actually that holds it in place. That's the main thing that holds it in place. These hoses and things you see here are part of what looks like a breather assembly, but they don't run anywhere else. They just kind of go from different parts of the tank, so they should come out with it. Now just down here it looks like the fuel pump, but from the reading that I did, there should be a length of fuel line coiled up under the tank, which allows you to lift the tank up and then disconnect the fuel line from it. So we just have 8 of these bolts to take out. So I've just got my socket set out. I'm going to take each one of those out. I won't make you watch it all. 7 more to go. It was just holding the expansion tank to the top of the fuel tank. There we go. Okay, so here's the plan. Fuel container down there, a funnel to get it in all neat and tidy. This is a 260 micron filter that I use for my paint guns. So it's used to having solvents and things in it, so I'm hoping it's going to hold up okay. So I'm going to drop that in there, make sure that no junk that's in this tank ends up in the tank for whatever car I decide to put this petrol in. And here's my hand pump. Okay, so I can see that's down in the liquid down there. I'm just going to start pumping that out. It's coming. It's just a bit of a slow job. Okay, so I wasn't getting anywhere doing that, so I've had to amend the design. So what I've done is I've cut the bottom of the tube at a bit of an angle so it can't seal against the bottom of the tank. And then I've used a wire coat hanger to keep this pipe straight, because what it was doing was curling around in the tank and then it kept sucking in air. So hopefully this will keep the hose straight into the bottom of the tank, and I'll see if I have a bit more luck now. I actually haven't used this before, and it seems like you have to be patient and wait for it to re-inflate the bulb. But it's working and fuel's going into the container. Okay, so the pump started sucking in a bit of air down in the bottom, so the tank's starting to get low now. But what I think I'll do is I'll undo the clamp that holds the tank down, and then I'll just prop it up a little bit at the far side so that more of the fuel will run this way, and then I might be able to pump a little bit more out. So just a little bit of WD-40 on that to make it a bit easier. Yeah, and just a pair of 11mm spanners to undo that. By all accounts, that strap was the only thing really holding it down, so I should be able to just lift up this side. Okay. Oh, there we go. And it's just stayed in that position, so obviously the fuel will be down that end now, and I can pump out the rest of it. Now that the tank's empty, I've just got this level sender device to undo, and then I should be able to lift the tank out. I made sure the tank was run down as low as possible before taking the car off the road, so I wouldn't have as much to pump out, otherwise we could have been there a long time. There we go. Should be okay to lift this tank out now. So as I mentioned, there was a long length of fuel line coiled up underneath, and that allowed me to get the tank this far. And now all I have to do is disconnect that. A bit worrying that there's not any kind of fuel clamp on it either. So I should be able to just wiggle that free, he says. And what I've got is just a bolt that I've put a little bit of PTFE tape on, and just a Jubilee clamp. I don't think there's going to be much leaking, but you never know. The tank itself looks in pretty good condition, just a small amount of surface rust here, which I'll have to investigate further. So we can just have a look down underneath where the tank was. You can see it's the original colour, because the original colour of this car was like a maroon colour, and there's the new red that they painted. So this is all original under here. And you can see a bit of rust. I'll have to clean it out so I can have a good look, but it's not looking too bad really. So if that bit of rust there is all I've got to deal with, then it's not too bad, you know, I'm not too concerned about that, and it's definitely a lot better than it could have been. Okay, so that's the fuel tank done, but before we finish this video, it's worth us having a quick look at the fuel lines that are running through this center section, because they're quite easy just to view from underneath. And if they're kind of like a transparent sort of color, then they're the original fuel lines from 1970, and they tend to get quite brittle and they can crack and break. If there's something else, then potentially I don't need to replace them, so it's worth a quick look. Just to say that this area wouldn't normally be exposed because the floor pan would go across here. Now this here, because I've traced them back to the engine, these are the fuel lines that are running from the fuel tank in the front. And as you can see, they're not an amber color anymore, you know, like this one. Not sure what that one does, to be honest. So these lines have definitely been replaced since the car was made in the 70s. And so the chances are I don't need to replace these fuel lines. And they just have some branding on them as well. So you can see it says Tecalan, and then a DIN number as well, and some other numbers which might be a part number. So I'll just look into that, and if they're a nice modern fuel line or something that's suitable for fuel line, then that's one less job that I need to do, which is welcome. So obviously we spotted some rust areas which I could tackle, but one thing I'm undecided about is how to paint this car. So the original colour was like a burgundy colour, Malaga red or something I think they call it, but then one of the previous owners painted that brighter red, which I think is Guards red. So anything that you can see on the car externally, the easiest job is going to be if I continue to paint that Guards red. There's a guy in Leeds, the local big city to me, who's really good at matching colours, so I could be able to just literally paint in any work areas that I've done, like for example where that fuel tank was. But obviously the original colour was this burgundy or Malaga red, and so I'm undecided about whether to go back to the original colour. Of course that'll mean a lot more work because it means a full paint of the whole car, and I really can't decide if it's worth it. So if you've got some thoughts on it, be interested to see what your comments are, because the other thing that links into this is how valuable is this car going to be in the future, and also connected to that is it a matching numbers car? In a video in the future, and I haven't done the research yet, I'm going to be looking into whether this is a matching numbers car. And if you're not familiar with matching numbers, I think you probably are. Very briefly, it means that when this car rolled out of the factory, the chassis number, the engine number and the transmission number all matched. If you have a car where it still has all those original components, then it makes it much more desirable and collectible in the future, you know, as these cars become rarer. And the reason I mention that, if you're going to restore a car back to its original colour, if the car itself is very original, then that might sway your decision. If it's got a different engine popped in it or whatever, then you haven't really got an original car, and that opens the door for you just to do your own thing really. At least that's my opinion. There's a lot of Porsche purists, probably more than any other brand, who like cars to be as original as possible, you know, including the colour and also equipment that's on the car. But anyway, that's more than I wanted to say on the subject really. So if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new to this Porsche restoration project and you'd like to join me on this journey, then please consider subscribing and clicking the bell, and you'll be notified when my next video comes out. In the next video, I'm either going to be looking at matching numbers on this car, you know, can I find out the info, doing some rust repairs at the front, or maybe even some patch panels at the back here. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.